And look at that, it's an easy one for Ibrahimovic. It's 2. And just as in February, Milan take a 2-0 lead.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of The Front Three with myself, Big Will, Coach Dan, and the prodigy himself, AJ. Again, AJ's on a little break. He'll be back very, very shortly. But once again, you've got myself and Coach Dan. How you doing, Coach?
I'm very well. What is there better to do than talk about football, really?
Absolutely. And we've got another very big guest lined up for you. So make sure that you stay tuned. Also, if you haven't listened to our episode with Raphael Honigstein, where we looked at match day 1 of the Champions League. So moving on to this episode, we're continuing our deep dive series, this time looking at Serie A. And who better to help us than one of the most recognized faces and indeed voices in football media. He's a columnist at ESPN, as well as being one half of our favorite podcast, the Gab and Jules Show. And he's also authored 4 books, including books about Capello, Vialli, and also Di Canio. It is the one and only Gab Marcotti. How you doing, Gab?
Hi, Will. Hi, Coach Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us on the Front Three. So let's start with Serie A then. So looking at the table, AC Milan, 4 games, 4 wins. Talk to us about their start to the season.
Yeah, it's been quite a remarkable start to the season when you go back to where they were after the lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
There was a whole question about whether Pioli was going to remain, whether they're going to go in a totally different direction with Ralph Rangnick. In the end, they sort of, they obviously kept Pioli, and they sort of said, no, we're going to continue with our idea of youth and younger players, and kind of trying to build a team that way. But they'd obviously made a big concession in extending Zlatan's contract for a year, and certainly in big games, Zlatan's been phenomenal, like the derby very recently.
Yeah, just talk to us about the influence he's had. Obviously, he's scoring goals for them, but just in the changing room and just around the club, what sort of influence has he had on AC Milan?
I mean, look, I always kind of hesitate with this because we're not there in the locker room, right?
Yeah.
So you generally find out when clubs want to get rid of somebody, they tell you that he's a bad influence. When they want to justify how they spent a lot of money, they tell you he's a good influence. Equally, unless you have disgruntled players leaving. I think, the thing with Zlatan is when you have a long-term project and you bring in a guy who's 39 years old, or who's 39 now, the question, and who's got such a huge, ego and needs to be the center of attention, rightly so. And, it's difficult to go and balance that out. There's a way to do that, right? He obviously knows he cannot play forever, even though he probably believes he can.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you balance that with a bunch of young players? It can be really good. And by all accounts so far, it's been good because, he's shown personality and he's shown leadership. I mean, I think there are other players on this team with really good leadership skills, like Romagnoli, for example. But from what we can see from the results, it's been a positive experience. And look, I think, Zlatan at 39 isn't like Zlatan at 33. He's been through that whole journey of being the older veteran player who was a bit of an egomaniac. He did that 7 years ago when he was in his early 30s. Now he's in his late 30s. I think he's almost reached like this Zen-like level where, he loves it when it's about him. He's not afraid to take responsibility, but he also sees himself as somebody who can nurture the players around him. And if that's the case, that's an asset.
Absolutely. And then talking about AC Milan themselves, I mean, they've been in the doldrums for quite a while. The last time they were in the Champions League was the 2013-2014 season. I saw an article last year saying that they have spent the 5th most of any team in Europe since 2010, yet they were struggling. So just talk to us about why for like the past decade or so, they were struggling as a club.
Well, I mean, the sort of capsule answer is you had an owner who, in Silvio Berlusconi, who grew very old and was losing got tired of losing money, also because he went into politics, and in some of his businesses he had to lay people off, and it wasn't a good look if he kept bankrolling his team. You have a team that really didn't cope with financial fair play well at all in terms of modernizing the club, and they'd been very successful doing things a certain way, and then kind of stopped, and he cashed in by selling to somebody who I would charitably describe as a snake oil salesman in Lee Yong-hong, and who put money in. He put a lot of money in. This is one of the big unsolved mysteries, right? This guy agreed to buy the price for 740 million euros, 540 million in cash, the rest taking on Milan's debt. He ended up paying he paid the whole amount. He borrowed he borrowed some 315 odd million. The rest of the money he put in himself, although again, where this money came from, who knows? And then he just defaulted and didn't pay it back. Rather than go and sell it to somebody else, at least cost some of the money back, this dude just said, oh no, look, I can't pay. And that's why the current owners came in, and these guys, that's a well-known hedge fund, Elliott Management. They're very hard bargainers. They said, oh, we have ourselves a bargain because, this is still one of the strongest brands in world football. And if we're smart about it, we can bring it back. And they hired Ivan Gazidis to lead the way, and made a bunch of other choices. Not all of them good, but right now they seem to be on track.
Absolutely. And then Coach Stan, what do you make of AC Milan, obviously now and then over the last sort of 5 to 6 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a name that's gone out the mouth of people for a while now, and it's been a shame because everyone that knows football knows of AC Milan's history, the great players they've had, and everything like that. And honestly, where they are right now, and seeing how they were, it's a big shock to me. It's a big shock to me because I still see that club and I look at their roster of players and it's just like bang average footballers, and the only difference to that equation is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But then are we putting everything on him that he's the one that maybe perhaps changed the mentality of a lot of the players there? Because apart from their captain, if Romagnoli, I believe his name is, I don't see a great deal of accomplished footballers in that team. I know they've got young players coming up, but one thing they have done right is since they come out from lockdown, they've been really, really consistent in their performance. Before this, I was mentioning to you how after lockdown, I just saw them getting good results, and I just thought, oh, let me just take a look at this team for a bit now. And they're slowly laying the foundations again. And I just hope they can keep going and add where they need to, because football, or Italian football at least, can't be without AC Milan. They're such a big club, and where we are, in England, you see these clubs that are folding and just they keep crumbling because of poor management and stuff like that. We can't have that happen to AC Milan. Look, I'm not saying they're anywhere near there, but with what's happened with COVID and stuff like that, it could easily slip up. But what they have done is they seem to have steadied the ship, and things are going really well for them. And I can only hope that it carries on.
And then Gab, obviously having a start like this means that it could raise expectations beyond where they should be. So what are reasonable expectations for AC Milan this season, in your opinion?
I think this season, I think their minimum target was finishing top 4. But, and I say this about every league in Europe, you guys, we need to understand that we need to put that asterisk on the 2020-21 season right now. Okay. Because this is the most congested, compressed season in the history of football.
Absolutely.
Because these players have had no preseason, or virtually no preseason, because COVID is hitting people. People are testing, look at the number of people who have tested positive so far. If I were a conspiracy theorist, I'd almost say it's almost curious how there've been no positive tests in the Premier League since David Moyes. But I'll leave that to one side. I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
No.
So yeah, dude, anything can happen. Everton can win the Premier League. AC Milan can win Serie A. We have to wrap our heads. The season may well not finish. We have to wrap our heads around that.
Yeah.
This year, everything is so different from everything else. But no, I think with Milan, I think they have some phenomenal young players. Theo Hernandez, for me, is one of the best left backs in the world. Yacine Benacer, who incidentally is Arsenal, trained, born and bred when they got away, is a phenomenal midfielder already. And they got Sandro Tonali, who's the heir apparent supposedly to Andrea Pirlo, who's the guy that everybody wanted in the summer. So and Rafael Leao, of course, going forward. So they've got that mixture of young and old. So we'll see how that works out.
Absolutely. And then talking about obviously the current champions themselves, for the past 9 years, they've had a stranglehold on Serie A. I think last year someone said it was the worst Juve to win the Scudetto. How do you see them shaping up this season?
Yeah, last year, it's almost like they still don't know how they managed to win it. Look, they basically did a handbrake turn over the summer, right? They were going to do it a year ago with Sarri, and then it didn't quite happen. Also because Sarri kind of bottled it. Sarri was brought in to lead a revolution in the way they played. And yet maybe because he kind of felt he had to deliver results while leading the revolution, he never quite got to it. They bring in Andrea Pirlo, who obviously has zero experience coaching, but is a club legend and crucially doesn't make a lot of money. And they said, all right, you lead the way. And they took a huge hit on wages because they signed a lot of very expensive players on huge contracts, some of whom they were able to give away, like Blaise Matuidi and Higuain, some of whom have stuck around, like Sami Khedira. But the bottom line is they've told Pirlo, look, and they haven't quite told them, sort of said this in public, that, look, it doesn't matter if we win this year or not. But they basically said, listen, you need to change the mentality of this team. You need to take us in a different direction. You need to do it with youth. You need to do it on a budget. We will back you. We don't expect, we've won 9 in a row. We don't necessarily need to win the 10th, but we want to be competitive in Europe. We want to play the way the top European teams do play, change that mentality. He's gone out, he's tried to do that, and there have been ups and downs, but certainly this is the most attacking Juve side that I think we've seen in a long time. And the difficult thing, he's got to do all of this while keeping Cristiano happy and keeping Cristiano supplied and keeping him on the pitch.
And do you think he'll manage to do that this season, or do you think the two are gonna, butt heads quite a bit?
No, look, the idea with Pirlo too is that he'd be something of like, remember when Zidane was appointed at Real Madrid?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, look, he's just kind of the yes man. And instead, Zidane showed that, he can speak to great players, and he just he's very good at putting them in a position to do their own thing. Now, Pirlo's done much more in 2 months than Zidane did when he took over Real Madrid in terms of changing things around. But they're hoping kind of to hit those two sweet spots. Having a guy who can keep the superstars happy and keep the team ticking over, because he was a superstar himself, and people will listen to Pirlo like they listen to Zidane. And at the same time, having a guy with strong ideas who can go and really revolutionize the way they play and really, turn them into a more modern footballing side, which is what Sarri was supposed to do, but what wasn't able to do.
Coach Stan, what do you think of Pirlo as Juve coach, and how he's going to perhaps change the style of play?
Well, thanks to Gab for, making us preview of like the conversations around him taking over, because I don't think, like he mentioned, I don't think that's been in the media, and we wouldn't have known as much. Look, I wouldn't want to make any judgments on Pirlo just as yet, right? Right now, there is that question mark. No experience. Let's see what he can do. And it doesn't, you know, I mean, at least with Zinedine Zidane, he sat under Ancelotti, who's a very, very good manager. With Pirlo, he hasn't had anyone like that. So only time can tell what he can achieve. I think with Juventus, though, going that direction, what they need to do is just give him time. I think they need to give him all the confidence in what they've asked him to do, and not to expect a lot. It's good to hear Gabby say, you know, that they're not expecting him to win the league, but then in the same breath, he also mentioned how they're expecting him to be competitive in Europe. Those are two tough things for him to do with the players that they seem to have now. And, you know, the club captain can't stay fit because he's aging a bit now. It will be an interesting project to keep an eye on. Whatever happened, though, I think they should. I keep saying this: if you brought him in, just allow him to do it. It don't even matter what happens. You've got Ronaldo in your team. As long as you have Ronaldo, you know you will do okay. You see what I mean? You know you won't be where you shouldn't be because you've got that superstar. And honestly, they've got great players. Dybala and you know, Ramsey seems to be playing quite frequently under him as well. Hopefully he can rediscover, you know, the talent that, you know, we all know he's got and everything like that. And let's see what they can do. I think for a long time I've always thought of Juventus as the, you know, their setup is similar to Bayern Munich in the sense that they don't need to have the best players to win that league, or they haven't for the last several years now. And they don't really spend top bucks until, you know, they recently start, you know, with Ronaldo's and stuff like that. They usually get sort of players when their contracts are finished, but very good footballers, and they keep them in their teams and stuff like that. I feel perhaps it's time to you know, to bring new talent from that academy, because they're a big club. But I can't remember the last time, you know, someone that was born and bred by that club, you know, set the scene, you know, set the stage alight and stuff like that. So it would be good that now that they brought Pirlo in, that's where they're trying to take it. And hopefully we will see what they hope, you know, Pirlo can bring. I hope that we will all get to see that, because it will be great to see. He was a great footballer, not only for these Italian clubs, but for the national team and everything like that. And you can only hope that he succeeds.
That's a really good point. Sorry, Coach. The last player who came through the academy, who was a major contributor, has actually retired. And that would be Claudio Martizio. So that tells you how long ago that was. We've already seen Pirlo play two kids from the academy who'd hardly played before this season. And they spent quite a lot of money this summer in adding two very talented young players in Dejan Kulusevski and Federico Chiesa, who are, I think, 19 and 22 respectively. So, you know, they are kind of trying to move in that direction. But you're right, you know, time is required.
And then in general, talking about Serie A this season, Gab, do you think it's going to be the most open that we've seen in a while, given the fact, obviously, there's been little preseason, there's competitions happening every single day practically. How do you see the season shaping up?
I think there will be. I mean, on paper, there's as many as 5 or 6 teams who I think can legitimately, you know, aspire to the title. I think the fact that Juve won 9 in a row makes people think that, Juve run away with it every year, but they don't. I mean, 3 years ago when they beat out Napoli, that was very close. Last season, how Lazio and Inter didn't manage to win the title is still a bit of a mystery. And if I go into this season, obviously, you know, you've got Juventus in the mix. You've got Inter, who've again spent very big in bringing in people like you know, Vidal, obviously on wages, Ashraf Hakimi and whatnot. You've got Napoli, who've looked like arguably the best team in Serie A this season, and who've added not just Bakayoko, but especially Victor Osimhen, who
he's
just
been
looks
great
different
so
class, been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you have Atalanta, who, you know, let's not forget, Atalanta reached the quarterfinals of the Champions League last season, and they're a lot deeper this year. They've added so many players, including really good, experienced players like Miranchuk. They've got Malinovsky coming back. Milan are top of the table. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Oh yeah, Lazio. Looked like they had it in the bag last year, and they've had a couple ups and downs this season, but they're just coming off a 3-1 win over Borussia Dortmund, who everybody raves over. So I think it's very, very uncertain, and let's see how things pan out.
Would you add Roma to that list? We talked about Roma a few weeks ago on our podcast. What do you make of Roma?
I would definitely add Roma to the list if Zaniolo hadn't ruptured his cruciate. He'll likely come back, I think, in March or April, but he really was that kind of next level young player that I think would have made a big difference. I think they're lying in wait. I think Fonseca is a tremendous manager who's working in often in difficult situations. He knows how to get the best out of his players, hasn't had the benefit of a lot of investment. Again, I think without Zaniolo, it might be a bridge too far this year, but they're certainly going to be competitive.
And then I don't know if it's me, but it seems like there seems to be a lot more goals in Serie A in general.
No, I think that's been a trend that's been going on for the last 3-4 years. Obviously, post lockdown, and they were seeing more goals everywhere. But if you think back to last season, with the exception of Juventus, funny enough, and at times Inter, the other teams all played pretty attacking. Oh, and Lazio, who scored a lot of goals, but obviously were more counterattacking. Most of the other teams, they took the game to the opposition. The old stereotype about Italian clubs being all about defending and counterattacking and the dark arts. That's been the buzzword now in SerieA for the last few years. And whether it's Sassuolo, who we haven't mentioned, or second on the table, small team, but plays super attacking football. The trend is you want people who go out there and dominate the ball and dominate the pitch and press and so on. Everybody's got televisions, right? They can all see what's going on around Europe. They see the way Bayern play. They see the way Liverpool play. They see the way Manchester City play. They see the way Chelsea want to play. And, the way Barcelona want to play. And they said, you know what? This whole defend and counter, very few teams are successful with that formula. I mean, I think apart from Atletico Madrid, there's no other big team that does it consistently. And so, they're all moving in that direction because I think it's the way the game's gone and over the last 5 years.
Coach, what do you make of sort of this new style of football in Italian football?
I mean, I'm not so sure about sort of like the new style. I just feel, I suppose what I'm seeing now is a lot of these so-called smaller clubs are expressing themselves. Gabby mentioned Sassuolo and of course Atalanta, who we covered sometime. I was going to say last year, but last season in the Champions League, how well they've done and everything like that. And it's crazy because I think 2 games before last they won, then they got smashed by, was it Napoli or something like that. Yeah. You expect that from these kind of clubs, I mean, Sassuolo are second in the league. In a few games, they could lose like 5-1 or something like that. But what it is that these so-called little clubs, they keep coming back. And that's the football we all want to see, We don't like this sort of thing where, they're small clubs, so they come and it's about just trying to keep it tight, not get beaten and stuff like that. Because what they have found out is that when they go out and express themselves, actually, more times than, sometimes, should I say, they're getting good results. And so I feel like there's like a change in mentality and everyone seems to be going by that. One club that I was a bit, I don't know, I'm still a bit sort of, I compare the manager a bit to like Diego Simeone is Inter Milan's Conte. And I just feel I don't know, I just, since he, his winning season at Chelsea, he's not evolved in what he's trying to do in a certain sense, because you look at some like the players that he's bringing in at Inter. Gabby just mentioned how he has no idea how they couldn't win last season, because last season it just seemed like whenever they had the opportunity to get ahead of Juventus, they will go and draw or lose, and it's just the players that he's bringing in are a bit bizarre. Like Ashley Young and Victor Moses. I know Victor Moses helped him in his winning season, but then he didn't sign him full time and everything like that. Then he's going to bring, well, they didn't get rid of him anyway. Niangolan and what's his name? Arturo Vidal and stuff like that. And these players are players that, history tells you about, so like the characters they are and their attitude of the pitch and stuff like that. And I'm just confused as to what he's trying to build there right now. They haven't stamped the authority as you would hope them to do, especially with what we've spoken about Juventus and what they're going through. It just seems like, and they lost on the weekend in the derby. It just seems like even AC Milan is starting to, impose themselves more than they are. And there's a bizarre situation also with Eriksen, and it just a lot of confusion, because I thought they brought Eriksen in to sort of build a team around him, because he is arguably their best, if not one of the best players in that team, but he doesn't seem to fancy him any longer. And it just, I don't know, it's just bizarre. I don't know if Gab can give us, I don't know, can shed some light on what's going on at Inter Milan at this precise moment.
All right, you sure you want that? You sure you want to enter the dark place that is Antonio Conte's head? No, look, I mean, I take your point. So there's a couple issues to do here, right? So one is when Conte came in, he signed a long-term contract. It's a very expensive contract, which basically makes it impossible for him to get sacked. And when you have that situation, and this happens a lot, managers want veteran players because they want to win now. And Conte, I think, more than somebody else, he values experience. He values toughness. You mentioned Vidal. Vidal wasn't necessarily a great fit at Barcelona, but Vidal is a warrior who in individual games, when he's fit, when he's not misbehaving, he gives you that. And for me, look, I always look at players' wages and how much they cost versus what a club can afford. And I look at it and, I didn't particularly like the Vidal signing for those reasons. Or indeed the Alexis Sanchez signing, although obviously he took a pay cut. But he values experience. There's this whole concept of I want winners. And I don't know, it's a bit of a Panini sticker approach. Now you could ask that, if he likes tough guys and winners, why did he sign Christian Eriksen, who, doesn't fit that category? And already it looks as if he's convinced himself, oh no, look, Eriksen kind of looks like a bit of a wuss, right? The kid who got picked on, and he's not emotional. Conte loves emotional players.
Yeah.
But Eriksen is what they needed, I think tactically. And now he struggles. Sometimes he's in, sometimes he's out. He played against Gladbach in the Champions League, played well, I thought. Conte's got to figure out the balance and make it work. The one signing I absolutely love is Achraf Hakimi, who I think is just a phenomenal attacking force. Although again, you could say, well, he's a fullback. Yeah, I know. But, this is the modern game, right? Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robin Gosens are fullbacks too. Fullback is no longer a wingback, if you want to call it that. This is not a defensive position anymore. The game's changed. I think what's tough is he has a huge squad. He's got the character that he has. I think where Conte excels, and this is the feedback that, a lot of Chelsea players gave as well, is he will sit for you for hours on the training pitch, working on defensive movements, working on shape, working on making individual players better. I think we've seen a whole new dimension to Lukaku, right? Put him in the front two, allow him to show his intelligence on the pitch, allow him to be a provider as well as just like a big target man, which I think was the way Solskjaer used him, which I think is very limiting to him. But the problem is Conte's not going to have that time this season, because I go back to this. It's a crazy time. These teams, when are these teams ever training? All they're doing is going from, putting one big swab up their nose to traveling somewhere else to quarantining to isolating to playing another game. And I think, you're not going to get the value added. It's not a coincidence that Conte did his best work, even at Chelsea when they were so good in a season when Chelsea were not in European football, because he's a guy who needs to have that daily work on the pitch, and I'm not sure he's going to get it this year.
Because defensively, especially, they look a bit shaky.
Yeah, look, the argument was that they were without Bastoni and without Skriniar, who, are, again, on paper, these are two exceptional defenders. Although, to be fair, Skriniar is also the guy who Conte dropped late last season. So you can't really use him like, oh, well, I had no Skriniar. Well, you didn't like him until a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
But no, that'll come. I think it's also from the fact that the way he wants him to play, he wants super attacking wingbacks. He's taken Ivan Perisic, who was a winger and I think had a good season as sort of Bayern Munich's third winger last year, and he's trying to turn him into a wingback, which I'm not sure how that works. So there's all these growing pains and not much time to work to go and address it.
And then in terms of the Champions League, how well do you think the Italian clubs will do in the Champions League?
Last year, we had Lyon and Leipzig in the semifinals of the Champions League. We need to wrap our heads around the fact that, you look at the list of winners and you see a small group of clubs, but the reality is it's a knockout competition. Anything can happen, right? We've seen Atalanta blitz teams in the Champions League. Very difficult for most clubs to play against. I don't think any of the 4 Italian clubs in the Champions League are by any means favorites. But I'll tell you what, you get to the quarterfinals, Cristiano can carry you if he's on form. He's carried Juve before. There's enough experience elsewhere that can make the difference. I wouldn't rule out Atalanta as well. I mean, they've scored 4 more goals in every game they've played this season, bar one.
That's crazy.
It's just so difficult to play against if you're unprepared or unless you've got much better quality. You look around Europe, and apart from Bayern Munich, it feels as if every big club has got some pretty major issues to deal with, right? I mean, Barcelona are dumpster fire. Liverpool in losing Virgil van Dijk, obviously a huge blow.
Madrid.
Real Madrid losing 2 in a row. City with their injuries. Chelsea with the fact that they keep conceding goals left, right, and center. So it's so hard to tell. I think we kind of need to judge these teams in April once we get to knockouts. Once we get a better sense of what these teams really are.
And then in general, Gab, obviously you've watched football for quite a long time. What do you make of all these leagues seem open, defending seems to have gone. It just seems like such a wild season overall.
It is a wild season. Again, I think, that's been the trend. Attacking football is generally, more productive than defensive football. It's not, I mean, look, there was a really good piece about this from somebody named Grace Robertson a while back about how, we went from, sort of 10 years ago where teams were happy, even big clubs were generally happy not to have the ball, knowing that, they'd go a goal ahead somehow and then they'd have all the space on the counter. And, now I think that paradigm has changed a little bit. Teams want the ball because they know that, anybody, and because they want the ball, they expose themselves more at the back because they know that if somebody goes and parks the bus against them, it's difficult for anybody to score, right? You rely on either a set piece or an error from the other team or an individual moment of brilliance. So it's much better to commit players forward. It's much better to have patterns of play that can generate chances for you, right? We see it with Liverpool every game, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea, or Man City, or further down. I mean, we all saw Norwich last season, and we're all like, they went down. Oh, look, they're too open. But look at Norwich's players. Would they have created any chances if they just sat back and packed the box and put everybody back there, right? Sooner or later, they would have conceded. It's the hardest thing to do. I think people have realized that if you play defensive and somehow you give up a goal, then it becomes really, really difficult for you to change your mindset and then go forward and attack, unless you do it desperately, in which case you could probably get beat again on the counter. So that's why we're seeing a lot of smaller teams being more open. And with smaller teams being more open, equally, we're seeing bigger teams saying, oh, well, look, you're playing more open. Well, we'll chuck on another attacking player then. Because I don't need 3 defensive midfielders. I'm better off trying to go and attack the space. There's also a very basic maths issue, which I think some people sometimes ignore. If I'm a mid-size or a small team and I play attacking football, and I win 1 game out of 3, I get more points than if I sit back, park the bus, and draw 2 and lose 1, right?
Yeah.
So in that equation, I know who I'd rather be, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have cottoned on to that.
Absolutely. Coach, do you want to chime in on this as well?
It was interesting. I've never really done that equation before, but it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? To lose 2 and win the one that's supposed to during I think Mourinho's teams were one of like the biggest teams like that. But even now, I feel like I don't know if he's like given up to the pressure or whatnot, but you can see now he's trying to get his team to play a bit of football, Mourinho. And it's crazy because he was someone that was always stuck to his gun of sort of like how his team was supposed to play. But I feel like even at Tottenham now, and I don't know if you guys will agree, like you wouldn't say there's been a game where his team has packed the bus like all his teams have been known to. The last time, he dominated in Europe with Inter Milan, that's exactly what they done. And they went to the final and beat Bayern Munich. But now it seems like he's taking a new approach, and time will tell whether he reverts back to his normal thing. But if you're a fan, and I know, Big Will, you asked sort of like how there seems to be goals everywhere and the defensive side is neglected somehow. I mean, right now, especially even in, with the Premier League, so like how many goals there's been so early on in the season, I think it's a combination to do with, of course, people not caring so much about the defensive side anymore, and of course the press that comes with the attacking game, and also I feel because of the lack of pre-season because of COVID, right? I feel those two things are big factors as to why we're seeing so many goals. But I'm not complaining, are you, Will?
Definitely not. So that does it for another episode of The Front Three with myself, Big Will, Coach Dan, and of course ESPN's Gab Marcotti. You can listen to us on Spotify, on Apple, and you can follow us on Twitter, and we'll be back again next week for another episode of The Front Three.